Story Vision Studios.
Disney's Wall-E. We're travelling through space. Can you see all the stars? It is so pretty out here. But what kind of planet is this? Do you recognise it? Yes, it's planet Earth, but it's so dirty. There are piles of rubbish everywhere. Humans no longer live here. For many, many years, they have all been living out in space in a big spaceship, waiting to come home. But who is this little robot? Let's see, it's Walle-E. He cleans up the mess left by the humans. He has been working for 700 years, and now he is all alone. All the other robots have broken down. Actually, he's not completely alone. He has a pet cockroach who follows him faithfully everywhere he goes. This is Walle-E's story. Walle-E lived in a cosy trailer with his pet cockroach. To pass the time, Walle-E collected interesting things that he had found among the rubbish. One day, he found a plant. He had never seen a plant before. He put on his favourite video. The little robot loved to watch the actors dancing, singing and holding hands. After all these years, he was lonely. He wanted to hold hands with someone too. Then one day, Walle-E saw a light coming from the sky. A spaceship landed and set something down on the ground. What on earth? It was a robot, just like Walle-E, except that it was a girl. Walle-E watched her, amazed. She is so beautiful, he thought to himself. And this new robot could fly too. When the spaceship left, the new robot flew around as if she was looking for something. What could she be searching for? Walle-E had lived alone on Earth for so long that he longed for company, so he followed the new arrival wherever she went. Suddenly she stopped. Has she found something? Wondered Walle-E. But instead she started shooting at Walle-E with a secret weapon hidden in her arm. She didn't know that he just wanted to be friends. Luckily, Walle-E was able to hide from the shots. This new robot was pretty tough. Suddenly, a fierce sandstorm swept in. Walle-E rushed into the storm to rescue the new robot and take her to shelter in his trailer. The new robot asked Walle-E his name. "Oh," sighed Walle-E happily, "it's Walle." "Walle," she repeated. Walle-E had never before heard anyone say his name so beautifully. Then he asked the new robot to tell him her name. "Eve," she said. "E," he tried. "Ea, Eva." He had one last try. "Eve." "Not bad, Walle." Walle showed Eve some of the interesting things in his collection, including a light bulb which lit up in her hand. Walle asked Eve to watch his favourite video and dance to the music with him. Walle showed her how to move to the music, but Eve wasn't used to dancing. She spun round and round so fast that she slammed right into Walle. Walle was thrown against a shelf and broke off one of his eyes. Eve was very sorry for causing the accident. But being broken was no problem for a robot like Walle. He found an old robot eye on one of his shelves and fixed himself. Eve saw that Walle was a clever and fun robot. She was definitely beginning to like him. Walle showed his most special treasure, the plant, to his new friend. Eve put the plant in her chest cavity and then she shut down completely. Walle frantically tried to revive her. "Eva," he called, but it was no use. Walle tried everything he could think of to wake Eve up. He took her for a walk, protecting her from the rain with an umbrella. He even took her to the roof of his trailer so she could get some energy from the sun. But Eve still didn't wake up. Soon, the spaceship came back to pick up Eve. Walle couldn't let Eve leave without him. He told the cockroach to stay put and held on tight to the side of the ship as it took off into space. "Eva!" Walle yelled as he knocked on the window, but Eve was still fast asleep inside the ship. The ship headed towards a giant starliner called the Axiom. On board the massive starliner, Eve was whisked away on a hovering transporter. Walle hurried after it, anxious not to lose sight of Eve. Mo, a little cleaner bot, was shocked at how grubby Walle was from his 700 years of sorting rubbish. Mo scuttled behind Walle, cleaning up his dirty tracks. The Axiom had some funny-looking robots aboard it. But hold on, they weren't robots at all. They were humans who had been in space for so long that they had forgotten how to use their bodies. They travelled around by hover chair, eyes glued on their personal video monitors, unaware of what was going on around them. But Walle had no time to think about them now. Where was Eve? Eve was awake again. She was with the Axiom's captain and Otto, the ship's autopilot. "Eva!" Walle cried happily, but Eve was on an important mission and couldn't talk to Walle. Walle hid and overheard the captain receiving an important message. "Congratulations, Captain! Your robot has found life on Earth. This means it is safe to return home. Put the plant in the hollow detector and the spaceship will fly to Earth." "Where is the plant?" demanded the captain. It had disappeared. Eve glared at Walle. Had he taken it? The captain finally noticed Walle. He decided Walle was filthy and Eve was malfunctioning, so he ordered Otto's assistant robot, Go-4, to take them to the repair ward. The repair robots examined Eve. Walle didn't like that, especially when they took off her arm. Walle was convinced that the repair bots were hurting Eve. Determined to rescue her, he charged into the room and grabbed Eve's blaster arm. Eve tried to reassure him that everything was fine, but it was too late. Walle accidentally fired the blaster backwards and the doors to the repair ward blew apart. All the reject bots who lived in the ward ran for the escape route. They were free! Walle was their hero. Walle and Eve dashed out of the repair ward. Now they were on the run. Pictures of Eve and Walle flashed on the security screens and the loudspeakers boomed out a warning, "Caution, rogue robots." The security bots tried to stop them, but Eve grabbed Walle and they flew out of reach. But what could Eve do with her lovesick robot? Eve decided to send Walle back to Earth, so she took him to the ship's escape pod. But Walle wasn't going anywhere without Eve. Suddenly they noticed something inside the escape pod. It was the missing plant. Go-4, Otto's assistant robot, had stolen it, and now he was planning to eject it out into deeper space so that the giant starliner would never return home to Earth. Walle entered the pod to get the plant, but oh no, the pod blasted off into space with Walle. Walle pushed every button, desperately trying to stop the pod. "Pod will self-destruct in 20 seconds, the computer informed him. Then Walle spotted a fire extinguisher. He remembered from his rubbish gathering that an extinguisher was a bit like a miniature foam-powered rocket. But was there time to escape? There was a huge explosion as the pod self-destructed. "Walle!" Eve yelled. Was Walle safe? Suddenly he came zooming into sight, riding the fire extinguisher. Inside the spaceship, 2 passengers turned off their screens and watched the 2 happy robots outside the window. They looked as if they were dancing. Walle showed Eve the plant. She was so relieved that she leaned towards Walle and rested her head against his. A spark of electricity passed between them. A robot kiss. "Look, Otto, "Earth is amazing," said the captain as he watched his monitors. "These are farms. Humans would put seeds into the ground, pour water on them, and they'd grow food." For the first time in his life, the captain was interested in something. He didn't even notice Walle and Eve flying by his window. The two robots zoomed back into the ship through an open hatch. Eve planned to take the plant to the captain, and then they could all go back to Earth. She told Walle to wait, then flew up a rubbish chute and disappeared. But Walle wasn't much good at waiting. He began to think that perhaps he should follow her. Eve burst out of the chute and showed the captain the plant. "How did you find it?" the captain gasped. "At last we can go back home. I wonder what Earth looks like now." Then the captain remembered that Eve had recorded images of her time on Earth. He placed a device on Eve's head and they both watched her memories. The captain was shocked to see the Earth so polluted, with piles of rubbish everywhere. Then he looked at the plant. "You didn't give up, did you?" he said to the plant. Then he declared, "We have to go back. There is still hope for Earth." Eve saw how tenderly Walle took care of her while she was sleeping, and was filled with strange and strong emotions for this rusty little robot. The captain wanted to go home, but Auto had been programmed to stay in space forever because it thought Earth was still dangerous. "Sir, I insist you give me the plant," said Auto. "On this spaceship you will survive." "I don't want to survive," said the captain. "I want to live." They started to struggle over the plant. Suddenly, Go4, Auto's assistant, used his suspension beam to grab the plant and hurl it right down the rubbish chute. Was the plant gone forever? Wait, who was that peeking out of the rubbish chute with a plant on his head? It was Walle! Poor Walle was confused. Everyone was shouting about the plant. He didn't realise it was on top of his head. Angry Auto zapped Walle as he tumbled back down the chute, followed by Eve and the little cleaner bot. Walle was badly damaged. Eve was so worried that she didn't even care about her mission anymore. She tossed the plant away impatiently. "Earth!" whispered Walle weakly as he picked up the plant. Now Eve understood. If they put the plant in the holodetector, the ship would fly to Earth, where she could use Walle's collection of spare parts to fix him. Just then they heard the captain's voice on the intercom. "Psst, hey, it's the captain. I'm locked in my room. Eve, bring the plant to the holodetector. Hurry, Auto's probably going to cut me off and—" Then there was silence. Eve and Walle rushed to the holodetector, followed by all the reject bots who came along to help out. The whole ship was in commotion. The security bots started fighting the reject bots. The captain opened up the holodetector and now it was up to Eve to put the plant in. But still Auto would not give up and struggled with the captain. The captain was losing his battle with Auto, who was just too powerful. Auto flung the captain to the floor and started tipping the ship, shaking it from side to side. All the human passengers were pitched out of their chairs, and worst of all, Walle lost his grip on the plant. Auto hit the button that closed the holodetector. The little cleaner bot found the plant. All the bots rushed to get the plant back to Eve before the holodetector closed down fully, but again Walle saved the day. Even though he was badly hurt, he rolled under the holodetector to stop the door from coming down. The captain was losing his fight with Auto. Suddenly he caught sight of the screen. Walle was being crushed by the holodetector, but he was still struggling to hold it up. The captain gathered all his strength and courage, stood on his 2 feet and took the first step in his life. He staggered towards the robot. "Auto," he said, "you are relieved of duty," as he flicked the autopilot's off button. The passengers watching the action on the big screen all cheered. Walle couldn't hold the holodetector any longer. He was being slowly crushed. Eve, with one last effort, managed to throw the plant into the hollow detector before it closed completely. "Plant origin verified. Set course for Earth," said the ship's computer. Victory! Their mission was accomplished. Now they could all go back home. As the ship's computer showed destination Earth, the humans on the ship tried to get up and walk. They looked like giant toddlers. Eve lifted Walle up. "Walle!" she crooned. But the brave little robot was lifeless. The ship reached light speed and everyone braced themselves for the ride back to Earth. The little cockroach was still waiting for his master when the Starliner landed. Finally, after more than 700 years, there were human beings on Earth again. Eve hurried off to the trailer with Walle in her arms, followed by the cockroach. "Good luck, friend," said the captain to Walle. Then he took his first step onto Earth. Back home in the trailer, Eve desperately tried to put Walle back together. "Beep," said Walle suddenly, lifting his head slowly. Hooray! Walle was back! Or was he? "Walle!" Eve whispered softly, but he didn't recognise Eve. He didn't recognise anything. He even picked up some of his precious little treasures and started compacting them into cubes of scrap. "Walle!" Eve called again and again. She tried everything she could think of to bring him back. She even held his hand, but it seemed he was just an ordinary robot now. Eve leaned her head against his. This was goodbye. Walle was gone forever. But then, there it was, an electric spark, the robot kiss, and suddenly Walle was squeezing her hand back. "Eva," said Walle. "Walle," answered Eve. Walle could hardly believe it. This was his dream. At last, he was holding Eve's hand. Now life and love would once again be found on Earth, and it was all thanks to Walle and Eve. In the future, Earth would be green again, and the humans would take good care of it. The end.